Guys, President Trump and Netanyahu just met together in the White House. And instead of headlines, all we had was silence and an announcement that a new carrier group is on the way to the Middle East. We're here at the studio for the TBN Israel podcast with the one and only Yair Pinto, joined by, today, the In Grace Solidarity Tour with Jim Scudder, our good friend. I don't know if you guys can see all the people in the studio, but there's a whole lot of people here.
This is a record breaking of amount of people that can enter the studio. And we were assured by the construction guys that the floor can hold all of you. So
we're almost
no pressure.
Sure. We're almost sure. Anyway, so let's get right into it. We're in this insane season right now in the Middle East, where just a month ago, we had an attack canceled. We're not sure how last minute it was, but it was very last minute. Mm-hmm. Then a couple days ago, Prime Minister Netanyahu travels almost immediately to Washington, meets with President Trump. They usually come out with fanfare and all these announcements and, all this happened, et cetera, et cetera.
He got on the back door.
Nothing. Not a single announcement comes out of that meeting. Not a single press release, aside from President Trump saying it was a good meeting, which is very uncharacteristic for him.
Good negotiations. There were good negotiations.
And then right after that, the Pentagon says, not only was it a good meeting, we're sending an additional carrier group to the Middle East. And just to help everyone at home understand, people think nothing's happening because if you track the daily news, it seems like it's the same headlines every day. There's a lot of forces in the Middle East, nothing's happened. There's not a lot of forces.
Another aircraft carrier just arrived, but nothing happens.
But that's
some tension, maybe.
That's not the case. We have right now in the Middle East the most substantial amassment of forces. I've heard several people tell me that it's when it comes to weapons, it's the biggest buildup of weapons since the first invasion to Iraq.
Oh, wow.
Not in manpower, because that was a ground invasion. But when it comes to weapon systems and stuff like that, it's the best of every system, both defensive and offensive in the American arsenal.
Yeah, this is very important, the part that you said, the defensive, because the Americans have been spreading their THAAD anti-rocket defensive systems on multiple allied countries in this region, including Israel, including Saudi Arabia, including Qatar, including other bases. But we're going to get into all of this in just a second. So let's begin. Welcome to TBN Israel, the podcast.
Welcome, Yael.
Guys, you can make some noise to start the show. Come on, give it up. Hey, thank you. We need to do it all the time. This is a lot funner with everybody here.
I want to start with congratulating this audience. I think in a season where everyone's somewhat concerned about flying to Israel, you guys made it here. You seem to be happy. Maybe they just gave you extra caffeine this morning. You seem to be very, very happy. Thank you for coming to Israel now. Has it been safe in this country? Yes. Absolutely. That's what it feels like. I think everyone's been on eggshells waiting for whatever the counter-Iranian strike is going to be, or the Iranian counter strike is going to be, and it just hasn't happened yet. And today we're going to try to figure out where we really stand, because there's been a lot.
Yeah.
There's been a lot that's been happening. When it starts with the meeting that took place in Washington, Trump and Netanyahu, but also with the crazy buildup of manpower and technology in this region. And I just want to sort of jump to the end and tell people, this hasn't been a static situation. It has been a very dynamic situation with a lot of changes happening. They're just in the details, so they don't make the right headline, and we're going to try to break that down.
So just before we start...
Yeah, and we just told everybody here that they must like, share, and subscribe, or they don't leave the house. And Gitai, our producer, you can lock the door so nobody exits before we finish. So guys, it really helps us to reach more people around the world with what's happening in Israel. And our goal, our mission, is to share the truth and to encourage you to pray for the situation, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. So let's start with what's happening just now, recently. And I think that the biggest thing that happened is the negotiations. Mati, maybe you can give us a breakdown of what was negotiated, what do the Americans want to achieve out of these negotiations, and what do the Iranians want to achieve out of these negotiations, other than destroying Israel. Side note.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. They always have it on the agenda when they're negotiating peace. Do we go back on our statement that we're going to destroy Israel and the Western way of life? Anyway, but to your point, this last weekend, and this has been a repeated event that's taken place many times in the recent, it's a couple of years at this point, The Iranians and the Americans negotiated. They didn't negotiate directly, but it was as direct as an indirect negotiation could be. They were reportedly next door, almost inside a meeting center. They had the Omanis going between them, negotiating and transferring the messages. But reportedly, we heard, this was last weekend, we heard that they actually met in person during those negotiations, although there have been no official pictures that leaked.
Yeah, we heard that they shook hands and stuff like that.
What was on the table, though? On the table were two things. The Iranians saying one thing, we're only discussing nuclear. Don't dare talk about anything else. We're not talking about proxies. We're not talking about money. We're not talking about the ballistic missiles. The Americans said, no, we're talking about all of it. And they said, well, we're not coming. They said, okay, we'll just discuss this behind closed doors. Mm-hmm. So what really took place behind closed doors? We're not entirely sure. We know it moved forward. We know they're talking about doing it again. We know that there hasn't been a strike since those negotiations.
Yeah.
So that in itself is something substantial. We seem to be making progress. And I want to say this because this is the question looming in everyone's head. There's always this question that's a binary question. Are we going the negotiation route? Or are we going the military route? And the answer is yes. And that's really the answer, because you can't negotiate without having every military piece on the table. So maximum pressure on the military level, maximum on the political. And you can't have a military action without completely exhausting the diplomatic route.
Yeah.
And that's where we are.
And I think it's important to share that stuff are happening behind the scenes of these negotiations.
Yeah.
So as the American envoys are discussing all of these issues with the Iranians, behind closed doors, in front of the Omanis, whatever, there are immense amount of military powers that are building up in this region. Mm-hmm. Armadas, this is how Trump is calling them, which is basically a nice name for a fleet, right?
Fancy name.
Sounds more like Pirates of the Caribbean style, but it's basically lots and lots of military power that are moving into this region. As you said in the beginning of the show, more than what we've seen since the Iraq invasion.
Yeah.
So it's a huge amount of military power. So you don't bring this much power if you don't want to use it, unless you really want to leverage the other side to agree to something.
Well,
so that's on one side.
That's my point. You do. Mm-hmm. Because even if your goal is, and Trump has said this publicly repeatedly, said we'd rather go down the route of an agreement. But that doesn't mean they're not going to use military power. And
exactly.
That's what I think people get confused about, which is it this one or is it that one? No, it's both of them at the same time. Mm. They're going down the route of diplomatic negotiations all the way through that route until the negotiations fail or succeed. And the minute they're there, this route, which is the military route, that's been progressing exactly the same way. And I need to explain this to people. People think we're just sitting here and waiting. If you look at a map of the skies of the Middle East in the last month, you will see an enormous amount of irregular activity. We have Israeli aircraft carriers or refueling vessels that are training in the skies every day. This isn't classified. You can just open up any Telegram channel or any YouTube channel. You'll find footage of this. You have American forces practicing takeoff, landing, bombing, passes. You have anti-aircraft batteries that are positioned throughout the region, plus all the defensive measures that are not just en route. They're already positioned in this region. So we're moving full speed in both directions.
And the secret island. Don't forget the
secret island that we don't know where.
We don't know.
But it's not Diego Garcia.
Yeah, you have Diego Garcia and you have another secret island. And the importance about these islands, it's kind of like the Air Force aircraft carriers, is that they can be a launch pad for multiple aerial strikes, because the United States is preparing for a prolonged campaign and not just a one strike and end it, like we saw at the 12-day war between Israel, Iran, and then the United States with the Midnight Hammer strike on the nuclear capabilities of Iran. This is something different. And the preparation here is to change the regime in Iran and to topple it completely. And this thing takes time. It's not like a one strike and end. This is a country of 90 million people.
And they're getting
minus.
ready also.
And
you need to remember that they're putting out a lot of military around the Gulf.
Yeah, exactly, Tomer. And the numbers that we have as of yesterday is that the Iranians have between 1,800 to 2,000 ballistic missiles that are ready to be fired in Israel. Yes, they were harmed. Yes, Israel reduced the amount of launchers in the last war. Yes, we destroyed the ability for them to create solid fuel, which shortens the lives of the ability to launch a missile and the preparations before you launch it. But still, they can launch 2,000 missiles at Israel, at the
Well,
United
in
States
total.
bases.
In
In
total,
total.
yeah.
Not
There-
at the same time, not immediately, but they can do it. So this is a big number, and they have been using the last, 8 months, 7 months, to prepare and to produce these missiles, to produce more and more missiles. They've been receiving shipments from their allies in China to create all of these military capabilities. And now we see in action friction between the Iranians, their fleets, and United States oil vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranians have some cards that they can play, Mati. Maybe you can elaborate on what threats they are making against the United States of America now.
2,000 missiles in a month. That's
Their
production.
manufacturing capability.
And I found you guys the exact military
List of assets.
capabilities. Yeah.
But to answer Yael's question, there's a couple levels that we're playing this game at. Level number one is direct military, and that's what everyone envisions. It's a ballistic missile strike on Israeli-related targets, American-related targets, and possibly allies of either country in the region. Who is that? That's possibly the Saudis, etc. That's one threat. Then you go down the terrorism route. Terrorism route is naval and proxies. On the proxy side, they have Hezbollah that they can still use, although they're a diminished force. You have, addition to that, the Houthis, and then they have IRGC. And the IRGC, this is what you've been mentioning, they've been probing at vessels in the Straits of Hormuz for a while now. What does that look like?
And by probing, you mean sending suicide small boats or like terror boats to like pirate boats that are not big enough to cause a reaction like a war, but they are still like harassing. This is what terrorism is.
Yeah, but it's not a full-scale attack yet.
Exactly.
It's figuring out what the other side is willing to do and how strong the enforcement on the American, let's call it, and other forces in the region side is going to be. Will they just destroy the vessels or will they retaliate? That's a very fine game that they're playing. They're testing the air defense systems, but they're doing it in a very, very cautious way. They're not sending suicide drones straight to the American surface vessels. What are they doing? They send a very slow drone, and they allow the American forces to intercept it 100 kilometers away from an aircraft carrier. So it makes a headline, drone attacks aircraft carrier, but they're not really getting to the carrier group yet. It's still way outside of their defense areas.
Yeah, but this is what they're telling the international community. But what they're telling their own people is something different completely.
Yeah.
They're using this, and then they change and divert the media and all the attention to state that they launched a drone attack against the United States aircraft carrier.
Well,
and they use that, and they use that in social media, in AI, to create fear amongst their own people and to project strength inwards.
Yeah.
Because we need to remember that just a few weeks ago, that major headlines all around the world were the demonstrations by the Iranian people against their own regime that were violently,
Suppressed,
taken down and suppressed. So this is something that the regime is still very much afraid of.
Yeah.
They didn't stop. It's not like the situation economically have improved in Iran. It's not like women can walk freely without covering their hair. It's not like they have democracy now. It's not like the currency is worth something. So all the problems still exist, but the regime is focusing on building up weapons and creating fear outwardly and also inside their country.
And they've succeeded, yeah.
Yeah.
If you really look at it in an objective way, they've succeeded in really, in galvanizing their public opinion towards a common enemy, which is Israel and the United States and the threat of an attack. And at the same time, they've been able to completely black out any kind of media releases related to what's happening inside Iran when it comes to the protesters. They've created enough of a, let's call it a media hype around the possible conflict to put away the conversation. So huge win to the Iranian regime on that sense. Just a few weeks ago, we were talking daily about the question of when is the Iranian regime going to fall? No one's talking about that today.
Yeah.
That's a big win for them. So just to finish the list, so we talked about they have direct military, they have terrorism and proxy. The big piece here is the economic piece, and that's really what people often...
Or the slaughtering and the massacre that they did to their own people.
Yeah, but I'm speaking externally. Internally, that was a really big issue.
Yeah.
Then externally, what they're threatening is closing off the Straits of Hormuz. And that's really the big challenge here.
Yeah, maybe we need to explain what are the Strait of Hormuz, what's the importance of it to the world, because geography is hard, and basically the Strait of Hormuz are connecting Iran, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and other very, very oil-rich countries to the rest of the world, basically.
Yeah.
And that's through this Strait of Hormuz, which is like a narrow strip of water. 20% of the world's oil is passing on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And anything you do to disrupt this trade passage is basically raising the prices of oil for all of us. And
almost instantaneously.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is where economics get really, really tricky for a lot of people, because you don't actually have to cause a lot of damage. You don't have to sink an oil carrier.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make people think that the price of oil will go up, because oil is traded.
Yeah.
Oil is traded. You have futures trades. So people are betting on what the oil cost is going to be. That affects all economies around the world almost immediately, because people are buying on a future price of what the oil is going to be. Then there's a geopolitical sort of, let's call it a unsettling effect of now we're afraid to move oil through this region, and people start talking about, well, maybe we'll truck it, maybe we'll run it through a pipe, maybe we'll do something else, and immediately it creates a shortage, and then everyone else who's exporting oil says, great, now's the time to raise prices. So a huge effect. Iran, and this is really the tricky part of it, they sit on two big straits that really affect a lot of the global trade, both for oil and other kind of commerce, sea commerce. Straits of Hormuz and the Bab el-Mandab Straits.
Mm-hmm.
So Straits of Hormuz are across from Iran, and then when you go underneath Saudi and want to come back up the Red Sea, you have the Straits of Bab el-Mandab, and it's an area that's been destabilized a lot with Houthi terrorist activity.
Yeah.
So they've done this pincer effect where they really are trying to have a chokehold on the global economy, even in the sense of being able to scare people. It's very, very, very substantial.
very effective.
Very effective in what they're doing. And it is a real threat for the Saudi economy, for the Emiratis, for global trade, and of course for their own income. And let's connect it to the big conversation. When you zoom out, this conversation about oil, it ties into so many different global events that have happened in the last 30 days that it's surprising. It ties into Venezuela,
Yeah.
because the shadow fleet of Iranian oil was whitewashed under on Venezuelan. Well, it's not on land, in their
Ports.
within their waters and ports. So Iranian oil would travel to Venezuela. They'd switch the manifest. They'd turn off the transponder. Yeah,
the flag on the
Turn
ship.
off
And
the
then they
tran-
will go to China.
Exactly. Turn off the transponders on the ships. They
China,
appear there.
China,
Now
China.
it's Venezuelan oil and not Iranian oil. And then they sell it to India, to China, to who else was it? Pakistan, that they were selling their oil to. That's how they're making cash. So this all is interconnected. All these operations that the American armed forces have carried out are all intertwined, which is why we're in such this tenuous and also interesting times right now.
Yeah, exactly. And what is Israel doing about this? You know, because I just have seen reports of the defense establishment of Israel that are boosting up the production of anti-rocket defensive systems, starting from the Arrow, which is kind of like the big range layer of defense, and then going into the David Sling, which is a medium range defensive system, and then into the Iron Dome anti-rocket defensive systems, and then you have also the laser beam, which is the close range mortars and drone defensive systems. So
Yeah.
all the companies in Israel that are involved in producing these defensive layers have been boosting up the production in order to prepare for the day that the Iranians will launch an attack against Israel.
And the U.S. forces are also bringing that THAAD.
THAAD, yeah.
THAAD.
That, yeah.
THAAD plus
There's
everything
THAAD
that goes
all
with
over
it.
the Middle East right now.
Exactly. THAAD and Patriot batteries.
So it seems like we are a lot more prepared than the last round of fighting that we had between us and Iran.
Yeah.
And may you remember that last round was very, very harmful and destructive to Israel. The Iranians managed to hit at the center of an Israeli town in Bat Yam. We were there. The
This is
destruction
crazy.
level was unimaginable. That was only one missile that hit, and they launched 500 missiles at us.
Yeah.
So there is a huge damage. They also hit a
Many-
hospital.
Many of them reportedly with empty warheads back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, we found out later.
Yeah.
But the one that got hit had full
They were
warhead.
not. They were not empty. Yeah.
We saw a whole neighborhood like in destruction.
No, and we need to understand that it doesn't. I don't want to sound like we're dismissive of Iranian capabilities. They have the ability to learn, and the let's call it the prestige of the Russian missile defense manufacturing facilities stands behind Iran. The prestige of the Chinese systems stand behind Iran, and by extension, behind what happened in Venezuela.
Yeah.
They're all tied. They want, and I assure you, they've sent all their experts and done all the software updates to try and stop the stealth bombers from reaching Iranian facilities again, and to try and outsmart American cruise missiles and other weapons that are going to be launched at them. And at the same time, they're trying to figure out how their ICBMs, their ballistic missiles, their intercontinental ballistic missiles, how they can make it into Israel and punch through Israeli air defenses. They've done a whole lot of learning since June of last year, and they're hoping that if there's an attack, that they can be more effective, because they were.
Yeah.
I mean, the rate of missiles that we were able to shoot down was very, very high. It was over 90%, which is unheard of.
96%.
Unheard of.
It's better that the manufacturers of the anti-rocket defensive systems predicted, which
Considerably
was
more.
around 80 or something.
That's
like
why
that,
everybody want to buy our system right now.
Well, they are.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
Yeah,
Mati,
that's
what you're
true.
saying that Trump is bluffing just before an attack? That's what.
But wait, Tomer, it's not just because of that. It's because of people like here that are praying for us and for the peace
That's
of
true.
Jerusalem. And I think that's more than just, I don't think that people like Mati, IDF officers, are the reason that we are so safe and secure here. It's more than that. It's biblical.
thank you for the vote of confidence. Yeah.
He's doing a good job, but it's not because we are special. I think it's because that God is faithful, right? Can I have an amen to that? God is faithful to the people of Israel today as he was 2,000 years ago, and his promises do not change. And that is why we are here today, and that's why you guys are here, because you have confidence in that. I mean, this is my interpretation. Or you just like the food here. So this is the main reason behind everything. We need to remember that this is a spiritual war. And this is a good time to remind our viewers back at home. First of all, like, share, subscribe, the usual. But please keep praying for the situation. This is not just a war between Israel, Iran, or a political decision about oil. This is a war between good and evil, and it involves all of us. The Iranian regime, Mati, is stating again and again, and now, while the negotiations were going on, they are chanting in their parliament, death to America and death to Israel. Okay, not just to Israel, also to America, death to the West. They are calling Israel the small Satan, and the big Satan, that's the United States of America.
They seem to be a nice lot of people.
Yeah, right?
They made a funeral
what
to
is-
Bibi and Trump in the middle of Tehran. Just saying, with empty boxes, but they made a fake funeral with all the names of the officers from the army, the U.S. Army,
Look,
and stuff like
they're,
that.
they're still deep in like the ceremonial dictatorship phase of
Yeah.
personality. Where you march the missiles and the soldiers and all that.
They had a huge
Yeah.
banner with the map of Tel Aviv.
Yeah. Just recently, it's still there. There's a huge banner on a building in a city center square in Tehran that states Tel Aviv is so small and we have so much missiles, so we can easily hit it.
It's in
by the way-
Hebrew. They
by the
wrote
way-
in Hebrew.
And
By
it's
the way,
Hebrew.
it's true.
Yeah.
Tel Aviv is small.
Yeah.
If you've tried to drive a car in Tel Aviv, you'll know that's true.
Well, it will take you a long time because of the traffic, but
Because there's a lot of cars in a small city.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And
but-
we're not very good drivers
and-
here in Israel.
and-
That's
and if-
something that we have to say.
And if you were here, and especially me,
Mati is writing emails as he's driving, so it's very,
On a
very
motor- on a
motorcycle.
motorcycle.
On a motorcycle.
10,000 shekel fine. Don't say that.
But to our point, they're correct. They do have a lot of missiles, and we are a small country, and that's part of the reason where, one, you mentioned this, God's been faithful to Israel. Two, the people of Israel have been very, very wise in crafting the defense, let's call it ecosystem. Three, we have really good friends, and those friends have the biggest club in the world, which is the American Armed Forces, and they're spread out across the entire region in a way that I think is unimaginable to people who haven't seen that level of military operation. That's what really people need to
So
understand.
coming back to that question, so
What do they
Trump
have?
is bluffing before an attack? It's possible?
Yes and no, but that's the whole thing. If you ask Trump today, is there going to be an attack or is there going to be an agreement? He wouldn't be able to give you an answer.
We'll see. Something like that, yeah.
Well, how? No, I mean, if it was behind closed doors and it was an honest to God question of where do you think this is going? Is like, well, I hope there's an agreement, but if there isn't an agreement, we're going to attack.
That's probably what
No, I mean, that's really the policy.
Matthew, I think something that's very, very cool that's happening, and you are the guy to explain it to everybody, is that despite all the fact that we are preparing for an attack against Iran, the economy in Israel is doing a lot better then multiple years going backwards compared to the economy of Iran and all the economies that are invested in terrorism. Can you maybe elaborate to a few yours? I think it's also very symbolic, yeah.
So a couple things. One, we were talking about the defense systems. The headlines in Israel in the last couple of months have been dominated in economic newspapers and financial newspapers with one series of headlines. Biggest deals in history, biggest deal in history.
Yeah.
Biggest deal in history, biggest deal in history. Like
One after another.
One after the other. It's not the same company. It's different companies. It's, do I say this without them being our sponsors? It's Rafael and Elbit and El Open, all these defense contractors in Israel. Everyone around the world has been looking. They saw what happened back in June of 2025. We were out. I was in reserves. I was looking up in the sky. What the Israeli defense systems did was, it was science fiction on a great scheme, on a great level. And we saw that, and everyone around the world said, we want one of those too. Actually, we'll take two, and please put a ribbon around it. So people are buying like crazy. And we're talking European countries. We're talking about countries who publicly state they don't like Israel and are not our friends.
But they want the technology.
The Spanish government, for instance, who are doing hundreds of millions or billions of dollar deals with Israeli companies. These are publicly traded, by the way, Israeli companies. So it's been really, really good for the economy. The shekel, which is an odd thing, there's a lot to say about this, has been on this very substantial and consistent climb in its value compared to other currencies, especially the US dollar.
Shekel is the Israeli currency.
The Israeli currency.
Yeah.
So it's been very, very good for us as Israelis buying things elsewhere. Not so good if you're selling services to people outside of the country, but that's sort of the trade-off in economy. And what I want to say is this is also related to who our sponsor is today. Our sponsor is Wise Money Israel, and it's a mechanism to invest in Israel, which is this unique economy around the world. And I'm saying this to everyone who's watching. We want to introduce you to these people because they're personal friends. I'm trying to think how many years I've known them. It's been decades at this point. Both the CEO and his family. And they are registered both in the US, they're an SEC registered company, both in Israel. And it's a way for people to invest directly into the Israeli economy. But you don't have to move money to Israel. You can do it in the United States. Mm-hmm. They have a very, very extensive professional team that's able to help you invest. As far as I know, I'm going to look at my notes for this. They manage over $100 million in assets. They do it with integrity. They do it with biblical focus. And we highly recommend them both as people and as a way to invest into Israel. There is a minimum for the investment, but if you're looking at your retirement or your pension funds or 401ks or whatever the mechanism is in the U.S., they're a good way to go about that, and they have the answers for you. Where do you find that information? It's on wisemoneyisrael.com/TBN, and you can get a free consultation when you reach out to that address. Again, it's wisemoneyisrael.com/TBN and say Mati or Yair sent you. One last time, wisemoneyisrael.com/TBN. And again, this is a very, very interesting situation where our economy seems to be spiking when everyone's expecting it to be on the downfall.
I love that. I think that's really nice that I've experienced again and again, especially in the past 3 years, is that when God is making a miracle, it's against all odds. It's not like something small that you can say, okay, I could do it myself. It's something against all odds. Like, we're at war. Our men and women are doing reserve duty for hundreds and hundreds of days. The economy is suffering. We need to invest money in defense, and still everything is going up. So it's just amazing to see that God is performing miracles on a biblical scale in modern days.
I think that there's also a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a reverse relationship between the fact that Israel is a life-seeking country, and you see that in the economy, and the Iranians and our other enemies are death-seeking countries, which is, you would think they'd be focused on manufacturing defense mechanisms and...
I'll take your phone. I think too many people are calling you at the same time.
Thank you. My wife does the same thing.
He's thinking of responding to all the
No, I keep saying,
people.
Stop calling, I can't talk. Stop calling, I can't talk.
There is...
No, but to our point, our economy has been skyrocketing because of this. But what's interesting is our economy is not focused only on defense. It's on...
שבע אמרתי לו.
Yeah, it's focused on a whole bunch of different things. And what's amazing is Israel has been able to continue manufacturing the defense missiles that are needed. And with the help of the American economy and defense contractors, we're ready for whatever the Iranians have to send in our direction.
Yeah.
And I want to say this again. People often underestimate how big the gap is when it comes to technology and ability. it's bigger than people imagine. What we saw the U.S. do in Venezuela was showing the world in the most public way possible that American weapon systems, with the help of some Israeli weapon systems, by the way, but primarily American systems, they trump, pun intended, every Russian and Chinese technological solution that they have for defense. They punch through the air defenses, the radar systems, they hack all the systems through offensive cyber attacks, and the list goes on and on and on and on almost every possible aspect of that technology. And technology is a mesh, by the way. It's not a single system. The same happened in Iran in June, and I predict easily that if an attack happens, it's going to happen once more. The Iranians are going to use everything they have, and Israel will be almost untouched. And again, this is a statistical statement. Almost everything will be shot down, and some get through. That's always the reality.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about the fears, Mati. Let's talk about Israel's fears of the outcome of these negotiations.
By the way,
so
Iran
the biggest...
just,
wait, 1 second. Tomer, what?
Okay.
You have a news breaking thing?
yeah,
Let us know.
Iran just said that no way she's negotiating about her missiles just now.
Yeah, okay, so this is number one of the major fears in Israel, okay? The fear is that an agreement will be reached, but that it will only talk about the nuclear missile issues, okay? Only about the nuclear situation.
Yeah.
And leave out of it all the ballistic missile development and the investment in proxies. Why is this bad for Israel?
On many, many levels. But really, the issue is here. The Iranians are the masters of negotiation. They always try to spin the conversation and sort of prolong it and hope that elections show up or someone loses their focus and moves on to the next issue. Our issue with the Iranians is not just that they are working on a nuclear program.
That's pretty scary.
Although
on its
that
own.
is an issue.
Yeah.
It's not just that they have ballistic missiles, although that is a huge issue. It's not just that they have the IRGC, which is a terror exporting mechanism. It's not just that they fund proxies. It's not just that they use illegal measures to fund terrorism around the world. It's all of it combined, and it stands behind the ideology. And that's why always the negotiation with them has been, no. We're not talking about just the symptom. We want to talk about the fact that you state that you're going to use everything you have, and you've shown us you mean it, and you mean business, to destroy Israel and the Western way of life and the United States next. And it can't just be about the nuclear program. It has to be about the whole package. And the Iranians to that say, absolutely not, every single time.
Yeah, and let me add another very important topic that nobody's talking enough about it, is the fact that they are depressing their own people.
Yeah.
So in these negotiations, oppressing, because Trump stated that help is on the way for the Iranian people.
Yeah.
That's a long way.
So that aspect must be addressed as part of this negotiation. There cannot be a return to business as usual and the Iranian people continue to suffer under the Iranian regime. There must be a change after all of this thing. So I hope that all of this is being considered as part of the negotiations between the Americans and the Iranians. And, I want to give credit to the Americans. They know how to negotiate. So I have trust in what they're doing. And also,
let's put an asterisk in that. The Trump White House knows how to negotiate.
Exactly. Yeah.
Previous administrations have not been very good at reading the culture of the Middle East and Asia when it comes to negotiations. The Trump White House has been very effective at it.
Yes.
With the help of one Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner.
But this guy is like, he has
unbelievable.
the biggest frequent fryer mileage card in the world. I think he's like everywhere, every negotiation, with every language and every leader. I don't know.
He shows up in joggers downtown Tel Aviv the next day.
No, he was on a USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier with his Hawaii shirt on it, so it's like... Got to be a great guy. We have to have him on the show one day.
Yeah, but to say something about the negotiation. So the Iranians, really for them, they don't want to negotiate. That's really the bottom line. And the Americans are saying it's everything or nothing. There is no negotiation where it's only going to be a small thing. And Israel behind the scenes keeps yelling, not just the nuclears. It has to be everything combined.
And Prime Minister Netanyahu flew to Trump also to tell him that the Iranians are developing intercontinental ballistic missile. You like that? It's a cool word.
You practice that,
I'm
right?
very proud of myself. Yeah. And the
sounds
name...
like a headline of a techno song from the 90s.
Yeah, right? And the name is clearly saying the ability of this missile.
Yeah.
It's
Look,
between continents, meaning the Iranians can reach the United States of America and other places around the world.
Again, we were talking about the dictator's playbook. This is, like on page number 1 of it, is parade missiles. They love the big missiles. They love parading them up
The
and
Sharpie,
down.
the sharp,
Yeah,
Sharpie pointed missiles.
A sharp point at the end of the missile. They love parading them down the streets, and everyone claps, and the soldiers, they're doing their funny walk. They love these things because it projects power, and it switches the conversation from an internal to an external one. But we know the Iranians are on the defensive, big time. They're freaking out about what happened in Venezuela because it cut off their cash. They're very concerned about the strike. How do we know this? Because we have satellites. And in the satellite imagery, you can see that the Iranians have been doing one thing, and a lot of it, using bulldozers to try to cover the entrances to many of their nuclear and military facilities, knowing full well that the last time around, the U.S. used the Moab, or what was the name of the BGU missile?
B2 bomb?
No, the B2 bombers with the massive ordnance penetrator missiles to really...
Mother of all bombs.
Mother of all bombs, as it's colloquially known. They used that to really strike deep into the Iranian nuclear facilities. Now they're trying to fortify them, and you can literally see this over weeks, where they're just bringing in more and more piles of earth to try and cover the entrances and the silos leading into the underground facilities for fear of an American attack. We know that they're afraid. We can hear from their rhetoric that they're highly concerned. We know we're going that direction. It's just a question of who blinks first. And I think this is really where we're going here. Our hope is that the Trump administration doesn't lose focus. What's happening here is on a historical, life-changing scale for everyone in the Middle East. We saw a move that happened, and I think we need to connect the dots for people, between Hamas, Lebanon, Syria, and a stabilizing move that has to do also with what's going on in Jordan, Egypt, the Saudis, and the Emiratis. There was an effect that happened after the October 7th war, where both Israel showed its power, the U.S. showed its resolve in stabilizing things, and we're in this move to try and shift the entire region sort of under the will of a positive Western power. And opposing that is an enormous amount of power, which is the Iranian axis of evil, backed by others, by the way, backed by the Russians, backed by the Chinese, backed by several others who are...
sometimes even backed by the Saudis that are just afraid of change, or other Arab states that are enemies of Iran, but they just, don't want something that they cannot anticipate.
Exactly. So these are all coming together. And then Iran is sort of the big, piece on the playing board, on the chessboard. It's the one that brings down everything else. Because when you cut off, people love using the word, the head of the snake. When you cut off sort of the source of this, you need to understand everything's money related. They've been funneling. The numbers are ridiculous. They said Hezbollah was $1.5 billion a year, whatever the number really was. It doesn't really matter. It's a lot of money. They were spending close to $20 billion a year on IRGC-related activities. Plus, they sort of stole the entire economy of Iran. So tie into that whatever you want. They're spending more than the defense budget of most countries in the world, including most European superpowers, on terrorism. And they've been doing it for decades, for our entire lifetime. They've been doing that. When you cut that source of evil and violence in the world, it dramatically changes everything. And everyone around this region, and everyone when you look at the second circle, which is India, Pakistan, China, everything related to the South China Sea, everything related to South American countries, everyone's looking sort of from the sidelines. They're looking over the fence to see what is the U.S., what is Israel going to do when it relates to the Iranians? How is that going to change this region? And if we bring down that region, we're talking about the kind of thing that changes the Middle East and the world for a decade after that moment. It is as important as an event ever could be, much more than Hamas, much more than Hezbollah. This is the source of evil, of radical Islamic terrorism that has killed thousands in Israel, in the Middle East. They've killed who knows how many, a number we don't know of their own Iranian people, and caused so much damage to the world. When we bring them down, and God willing that happens sometime soon, that changes the world we live in for good for a very long period.
Exactly. So I think this is the time that we want to ask you that are here with us to join us and to ask some questions about this topic or any other topic that you might have.
And you don't have to get up. Gitai will bring a microphone to you.
Yeah.
Since we
just
have
raise your hand.
We have a full house.
Thank you for hosting us. This has been wonderful to sit and watch from behind the scenes. It's probably very likely that there's going to be some kinetic war between the United States, Israel, and Iran. We're hoping for a U.S.-led strike. It could be an Israeli strike, preemptive, like you did in June when we were here, my wife and I were here. How bad would it be for Iran to do a preemptive on Israel? What damage could there be if they just launched everything at Israel preemptively?
Do you think that's likely?
I think it's very possible because, well, I think it's possible.
What do you think, Yael?
Well, I think that Israel has been prepared for a preemptive strike by Iran for more than a month now. So that option has been discussed, and Israel has been preparing for it. Also on the level of the civilians, the citizens. We were told to make sure that our bomb shelters are clean and that we can enter them. But that's it. School resumes. Everything goes on as normal. So I think that what we learned and what changed between now and the previous fight between us and Iran in the 12-day war is that we struck their ability to launch fast surprise attacks at us because of the solid fuel component that is missing. So basically, their missiles are stored in mountains, in valleys, in places, but they need to get them out, and then they need to refuel them, a process that takes a few hours compared to just, tens of minutes with the solid fuel. So we have better intelligence and the ability to launch attacks
No,
than before.
my favorite term, it sounds like something out of Star Wars, planetary mixer.
Planetary, yeah. you mix planets. Yeah.
Planetary mixer, which is the device that mixes solid fuel. And apparently it's a really complicated process. And we've destroyed several in Syria.
Most of them, yeah.
Several in Syria and several in Iran. Iran, as the Iranians say, we keep getting in the comments.
Iran.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we use the American English on the show. It's Iran is the name of the country.
Yeah.
Iran.
And we've destroyed several of them, and they keep buying them from the Chinese, and then we destroyed them again. So again, the missiles are a thing. I don't think the Iranians are going to have a preemptive attack.
And if they do, I think our intelligence is...
No, it's not in
Couple
their
step
character.
ahead.
What they've done so far, if you look, let's say 20 years back, they're very, very, very smart at dancing the line, like exactly pushing the line exactly to the point where the other side is going crazy with, we're going to retaliate, we're going to do all the sanctions, everything we can, but they don't cross the line for the most part on their own. They always do it with plausible deniability. Oh, it wasn't us, it was the Houthis. They're crazy. They don't listen to us. You've seen them with their skirts and flip-flops. They're always hiding. They're always hiding. This is them saying, not me.
About the flip-flops.
About the flip-flops.
I'm sure they said about the flip-flops.
Anyway, but they're always super careful, and you see this also with the negotiation. They dance the line with the American government to such an extreme degree. They'll announce the negotiation. They'll say, no, we want to change the location. Okay, fine, we'll change the location. No, we're not going to talk about this. Trump yells, we will talk about it. Okay, we'll discuss it. They're always going back and forth to pull as much as they can out of the negotiation, to prolong them as much as they can. I mean, they're known, rightly so, as master negotiators. We've seen what they've been able to negotiate with both Western countries and previous American, let's call it White Houses in the past. They're very smart at playing the game. They don't need to have a preemptive attack. They've shown what they're willing to do. They have the missiles. Now, and I think also from them internally to explain to their people, they're playing a war of what they call survival on an ideological and practical level against the huge enemy that is the American forces. Again, from their regime's perspective, that is true. The greatest fighting force in the world is descendant on their nation, and they're waiting for them to make a mistake to blow them out of the water and blow them up on land. I mean, it's a very substantial threat that they're facing right now. I don't think that's going to happen. I think something else is going to happen. They're going to find an excuse if the negotiations in a theoretical way blow up and they don't work out. There'll be some kind of excuse, a clash in the straits, something that has to do with a surface vessel, a misidentification.
Or an attack against the supreme leader.
Something.
Maybe a commando attack that fails, like they did in the protesters.
But they could do it themselves.
Grab a few people and say, you are CIA agents or Mossad agents.
Exactly.
And we caught you. So you try to
couple
do
of
this.
people.
Now the negotiations are in bad faith. We are not talking to anybody.
But
Something
also,
like that.
if you look back at these kind of regional, like, let's call it superpower and regional power wars, oftentimes they go one way or another because of misinterpretation and someone that said, I'm going to make the responsible or irresponsible decision.
The small event that blow everything.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be something major for it to go into a full war.
Plus, you need to remember that last time that they launched attacks against Israel, we had at least a 30-minute, announcement before. Remember, on the phones?
On those 30 minutes, we destroyed most of the military officers.
Yeah,
Well, not just us.
So we have a heads up.
Israel and then the United States. Who was it also? The Jordanians.
The Jordanians.
And several other European forces, I believe.
It was the British army and the French army.
But
they practice with us.
Yeah, they did target practice on Iranian drones and ballistic missiles for hours as they were flying from Iran to Israel.
Mati, do you remember the first, the preemptive strike by Israel against Iran that started the 12-day war? We got these text messages all over Israel with this like scary noise. You had to wake up.
It wasn't my messages to you guys?
No.
That we're going live?
And then we get these messages in the middle of the night. Israel is about to prepare a preemptive strike against Iran. Wake up, go to the bomb shelters. And it's like, the whole country is like, if we are launching an attack against them, why are we need to wake up in the middle of the night and go to the bomb shelters?
They should wake up.
They should wake up. Call us when they launch an attack against us. Why am I waking up?
I remember that season. I was in reserves, and then we would do lives almost every night. I think it's the least sleep I've had in a long time. Like, it was rough. Anyway, but so I think that's where we're going with this entire equation, which is it's all gonna, best case scenario for the Iranians, let's say it that way, is for them to have a failed negotiation, as in the negotiation sort of ends on a positive note, but it's not strong enough to really bind them, and they buy time. Best case scenario for Israel is very strong negotiation that really forces a regime change in Iran. I don't see that happening, honestly. And for the Iranians, anything else is really bad, is a worst case scenario.
Yeah.
An attack, a preemptive attack. In every one of those scenarios, the U.S. has a whole lot of people that love pushing red buttons in the Middle East that are just waiting for them to make a mistake. Let's take another question.
Thank you for broadcasting about what's happening, because in America, it's hard to find out what's going on over here. Okay, so we appreciate you all. The next thing is, because our previous administration has let in so many from even this area, we all know that we have terrorist organizations inside our country. So my question is, let's think outside the box. What about, could something happen at home to distract and change the narrative? So
You're talking about what, the U.S.?
inside the U.S.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay, small cells, sleeper cells. The other thing is, I wanted to ask, is North Korea in any way involved in any of this?
To the second one, that's an easy one. I'd say, to my knowledge, no.
Hezbollah tunnels. North Korea is a place to buy stuff from.
To buy Russian systems manufactured by the Koreans. But to answer your question, I'll answer with a question, which is what Israelis love doing. And I'd say, what is scarier? A few sleeper cells inside your country, or multiple foreign countries that have spent billions of dollars trying to affect and twist your education system and cause your own people to be anti-American and against your own values? What is scarier than the two? I'd go with the second one. So if you look at what the Qataris have been doing to U.S. colleges, before them,
The Emirates.
the Emiratis, and before them, the Saudis, who were much more, they were heavy-handed and less fine with the art
Less subtle, yeah.
less subtle with the art of political manipulation. But this goes back decades. And the Russians have never been shy from trying to affect social media platforms. Look at any one of the American elections. There's always some kind of scandal that has to do with Russian hacking and Russian manipulation and bot farms. What would make us think that the Chinese are not doing the same? in every country. We know the Iranians are trying to affect Israeli social media and Israeli propaganda.
I was approached multiple times to join the Iranian spy agencies. They keep texting me, go to the nearest Iranian embassy and tell us everything you know.
I was just about to ask you how you
They
afforded
don't have an embassy.
I was going to ask you how you afforded to replace your car just recently.
Well, my car barely starts, so I don't think it's from that.
Anyway, but to your point, the wars nowadays are not necessarily fought in the battlefield. They're, for the most part, not fought in the battlefield. And when they are, this is going back to Korea. We're talking the 50s. When the threat of nuclear warfare or nuclear annihilation is on the table, which it has been since Hiroshima and Nagasaki at the end of World War II, what most countries do is they do proxy warfare. Israel might fight against another force, but the true source of evil behind that, we're not fighting against them directly. They're working through social media. They're working through mass media manipulation. They're buying out people. They're buying out news outlets. And that exists all the time. Sometimes it's innocent in the sense that it's a billionaire who just wants his opinion to affect society, which is a legitimate thing in a democracy. And sometimes it's malicious in the sense that there's a government that is anti your entity, your country, your values, that's trying to manipulate. We know as a fact that Qataris are doing that to the Americans. We know as a fact that the Qataris have been buying out the European governments and European Union, carrying cash into their parliament to pay off people. This is a recent scandal that came out, and you look at U.S. campuses, you look at BLM and all the conspiracies related to that. The list goes on and on and on and on. It's always about destabilizing and undermining your government and our government, by the way. I find that to be a lot scarier than a couple of, whatever the nationality is, people that pop up with guns. That is dangerous on a tactical level. It doesn't undermine your entire country. I think that's the real answer. Maybe one last question?
A microphone.
Bum, bum, bum.
You're talking about regimes change in Iran. What does Israel want? I know Trump wants regime change. Is it the Shah that come back or someone else?
So I think that the talk that the Shah became this figure that can replace
It's
the
the
Ayatollah
son of the
regime.
Shah.
Yeah, the son of the Shah, Pahlavi.
Reza Pahlavi.
Reza Pahlavi,
met
and
him.
it's a force of hope of bringing Iran back to the good old days, that their economy was good, that Israel had relations with them. But I think that everybody is talking about that as like a first step until there will be elections making Iran more diplomatic, basically like a Western entity here in this region. But you need something in between, and you need somebody that the people can look up to replace what they have now. So I think it's a multi-layer process. Nobody knows if it will work or not, but that's the plan, if there is one.
Right. And
The Americans kept him, for 40 years alive? And he's one of the most wanted men, all around the world. The Ayatollah regime do not want to see him.
Assassinate him.
Yeah, they tried to assassinate him multiple times. So they kept him alive, I think, for this reason.
Yeah. I'd say there's one more thing here, which is an important distinction to make. Sometimes you war against a people that is ideologically opposed to you. Our war against Hamas and Gaza is a war against not just the terrorist, but the people group, because the people group almost exclusively identifies with Hamas values, even after several years of war.
Even now.
Even in Judea and Samaria, we suffer from the same problem, where there's an alignment between the terrorists and the population, almost to make them inseparable. It's the same people. That's not the case in Iran. In Iran, the people speak against the government. In Iran, the people speak in support of Israel and in hope of regime change. Prime Minister Netanyahu repeatedly, President Trump repeatedly, Marco Rubio and several others in the American government have said, we are not enemies of the Iranian people. We're enemies of the Islamic radical government that has stolen that country from those people. We're friends of those people. We love them. Israel has a biblical history with the Iranian people. I should say the Persian people. For me, even on a family level, these are people that are kins to us and have a biblical history. We're not against the people. We're against the regime. And here is where you really see that our governments are going for regime change, not for just hurting the people. This isn't about bombing a country. This isn't about showing your military power. It's about finding the way, which is far more complicated, far more nuanced than just bombing. It's finding a way to remove this cancer in the body of the Iranian nation from that country, turning them back to be the Persian nation, the Persian people, versus the Islamic Republic of Iran, which they've been since the revolution in 79.
Yeah, and we have many, many viewers on our shows from Iran. And I want to tell you guys, we are praying for you from Israel. The people of Israel are standing with the Iranian people. And we are praying for you to have a better leadership, a future, a government that seeks to develop education, prosperity, and not just terrorism. This thing can happen, and we are here with you for the day that the flights will be opened between Israel and Tehran. Mati and I will be on one of these first flights then.
Maybe not the
Joining
first
you
one.
Second.
Maybe not the first one, but the second or third one. Just want to make sure it's safe.
Well, thank you for joining us. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and come visit us here in the studio. Did we have a good time?
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.